Hello and welcome back to the Radio Gamescast. We're back to our regular schedule, enjoying some video games, and maybe not enjoying others. The best way to
Vidi
put it.
games.
As always, I'm your host Ryan, and I'm joined by my lovely co-hosts, Brett,
Hello.
Wyatt,
Hello.
and Alex.
I'm keeping it normal this time.
Great. I left you for last so you had the opportunity to really dig yourself a hole.
Not for long.
When you don't, that's when I'll be most disruptive.
Of course. Well, we're gonna have a low-key show today. This is our after New Year's special, the first episode of 2023, and that means we need to answer for the mistakes of 2022, as well as look at some things coming out in the future and see what people think. See if there's some hype here, some not so much hype, disappointment. You know, all we're gonna run the gamut of
Disgust,
emotions
maybe.
today.
Angst.
Maybe a little bit of disgust, yeah. I think there's a lot to talk about, good and bad from both years. And then we're going to have a big rundown of our favorite things from 2022 in a few weeks, but that'll be left so we have time to play any remaining things we wanted to talk about for that and, you know, get caught up on what other people have enjoyed of the year. So we're going to do that. But first, I just have one news story I want to mention today. The rest can wait. But there's an update on Yuji Naka.
Oh,
don't
this
know.
guy. Get a load of this guy.
If you guys remember, Yuji Naka is one of the Sonic co-creators, responsible for Balan Wonderworld.
Dragon Quest, right?
I don't know that he has anything to do with Dragon Quest, but he is currently under investigation for insider trading of Dragon Quest. That's part of it. But we've gotten more details on this Yuji Naka getting indicted about insider trading some Square Enix games. And I think a lot of people were like, oh, it might just be, you know, a small amount of money or a small amount of stuff going around. He might have just been, it'll be a small charge. He won't have a huge issue. $900,000.
Oh my god.
Chump change.
Yeah,
Chump change.
this is dollars, right? Not in
That's
yen?
converted from yen to dollars.
Oh my god.
It's a lot of money.
That's just literal life-changing money. What's the big deal? I don't get it.
Yeah. So he supposedly knew inside information about the Final Fantasy mobile game that was being developed and had bought almost $9,000 worth of stock, $900,000 worth of stock, based on that information, which is fully illegal. That is the definition of insider trading, is acting on information that the public does not have that you know about. It's not good, not legal. It's why when people are part of a company, especially higher ups, they tend to keep stock that they have and don't sell it until they're retiring, because if they do, it's really hard to prove that you didn't know something. So, huge pile of issues. There was also a mobile game for Dragon Quest that he was implicated in for another $20,000.
God.
So, really, really strange set of things here. And it's not like he purchased stock from Square Enix, because that's harder to prove that it would be insider trading, because it could just be trading Square Enix, right? Based on public information. What he did is he purchased stock of the companies that Square Enix was partnering with to co-develop these titles. So you would have no way of knowing these companies were making like a high dollar game until they were announced, and obviously they weren't announced at the time of him buying the stock. Poor Yuji Naka.
Balan Wonderworld
Some
does
poor
stuff to you, man.
decisions. You know,
It drove him to make a Martha Stewart.
what a wild adventure that Yuji Naka has had on his way to indictment. All right. Moving out of that into 2023. I want to talk about some 2023 games, and I want to get some opinions from people on 2023 games. And of course, we haven't played these games outside of like demos or publicly available things. These are largely just us hype reacting to how the marketing for these games has been. That's, I think, the big part of it. So I'm just gonna throw some random ones out there, see what people think. I want to start with a game that we thought was dead in the water for a long time, but recently got revived not through its own trailer, but through Goat Simulator 3,
Oh, what?
and then got its own trailer, Dead Island 2.
Yeah,
Ah,
Dead
That's
Island 2 is
right.
slated to finally come out in 2023 in
there
April.
was a gameplay trailer that came out, and very few people talked about it. I feel like it was
Well,
like all the
because they
buzz for
didn't
like a
show
day.
the gameplay trailer. They showed like a cut version of it, and then the gameplay trailer went live with like a live action trailer paired to it.
oh. Been a
It
while
was-
since I've seen a live action trailer for
It
anything.
was very strange, and
Looked fun though.
it looks like a Dead Island game, which I don't remember. I mean, I remember playing the first one many
Does it look like
many
a second Dead Island game?
years ago. Well, I mean, it looks like a Dead Island game. What are you talking about? I'm so confused. I'm so confused.
What do
It
you
looks
imagine
like
a second Dead Island game looks like, Alex? What's the difference between that and a Dead Island game?
Seeing as I've seen very little of the first one and just know what the cover looks like, I'd assume the cover, but with a 2 on it. Or maybe
Nice.
someone
Well, that
holding
is
up a peace
exactly what
sign
it
as a
looks
2.
like. So,
We're starting off on a high note in 2023, ladies
on
and
a high
gentlemen.
note for these. The reason I bring
Follow
up Dead
me for
Island-
more video game predictions for 2023.
The reason I bring up Dead Island 2 first is I actually played a bit of the original Dead Island. For the last month, I've been on a road trip to see family and had nothing but a Steam Deck with me. And so I was loading up on some weird things for the Steam Deck, one of which was Dead Island. And it holds up surprisingly well. Feels pretty modern comparatively, especially for a game that was, let me check my release here to make sure I'm not embarrassing myself, but early 360 generation. So pretty far back. I think it's definitely 2011, so same year as Skyrim. Aged pretty well. It has a lot more of because I'm more familiar with Dying Light, and I think Wyatt is also more familiar with Dying Light in terms of what we've spent a lot of time playing. And I think it's easy to forget the differences between Dying Light and Dead Island. Dead Island feels a lot more like a Borderlands-y.
Really, I
almost.
always thought of Dead Island as more like Left 4 Dead.
it leans way more into the RPG stuff than you would expect.
Yeah.
Um,
It almost has like
Yeah.
the looter elements to it, and I don't want to say looter shooter because this is stuff that came from ARPGs,
Yeah.
but feels very much like that ARPG stuff just kind of translated into a first-person game.
And it also predates looter shooters by a good couple of years as well.
Except for
like.
Borderlands.
Except for Borderlands. Right. But yeah, I mean I remember enjoying it. I remember the melee combat just being super crunchy and satisfying. And I also remember one of the big differences between when I had first played Dying Light versus Dead Island was that Dead Island went a lot more insane on like the weapon crafting and just had way more just wacky stuff you could do.
Dead Island kind of went for the Dead Rising approach of just letting you make some wacky stuff, whereas Dying Light tended to be pretty grounded until the slew of DLCs that allowed you to make some real wild things came out. It was generally more grounded, and also firearms. Like there's a super in Dead Island because your characters have like super abilities that you can use.
Ooh.
Where one of them is just you pull out a sidearm and start shooting things. It's very fun. I'm wondering how much of that type of like skill tree stuff is going to translate into Dying Light 2. Or not Dying Light 2, Dead Island 2. Easy mix up. I'm very curious how this game's going to turn out. I think it's been in development for a very long time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and on that note, the developer of this game, Dam Buster Studios, has a bit of a fascinating history. So they're a subsidiary of, or at least they were, I'm not sure if they still are, of Crytek, right? And before that, they were Free Radical Design, which, if anyone remembers Free Radical Design, they made the Time Splitters games. And they were made up of very good games. They were a bunch of Rare developers, and then they went on to make the Time Splitters games. And then they were going to do the original Star Wars Battlefront 3, which was like 95% completed, and they just had major bug fixing to do. And then when the big Disney buyout happened, the game was basically just squashed out of existence. And then they were bought by Crytek. And then their first game, I believe, as Dam Buster Studios, was Homefront: The Revolution. If anyone remembers that game, if you don't, I do not blame you.
Received.
Not super well received, but that was another game that went through many, many, many different like delays and just strange development complications. And so they now have a history of just picking up sequels made by other developers that have had just bizarre development troubles and then like, here, finish it, please. Super interesting. Their only other thing worth of note was they assisted the developer who made Chorus, was it like a 2D shooter
thing,
last
right?
year? Yeah.
The dogfighting space game.
So I'm not going to say this is immediately going to be bad because I don't know how much of of Homefront: The Revolution was their fault because they were not the only person.
And Homefront: The Revolution wasn't like a bad shooter; it just didn't have a good structure. That was the real problem.
It was very buggy. It was very buggy on release as well, from what I remember. So that doesn't immediately mean it's going to be a bad game. I just wanted to point out that Dam Buster has a very, very interesting history.
Yeah, it's really been shooting all over the place in terms of quality. Yeah. So I hope this is good because I do think we haven't had a high-profile zombie schlock game in a while. All the high-profile zombie games recently have tried to be very high art in terms of their storytelling. I mean,
I think we do get some schlock games. We do get some zombie schlock games, but it's mostly by accident.
Yeah,
like I would say,
not intentional. And Dead Island is
Dying Light
2,
was intentionally trying to be deep, and it turned into schlock.
Which isn't necessarily a huge problem, but I think a game knowing that it's going to be schlock going in is a good thing. Get a classic B-movie feel from it. So I hope it lives up to a B-movie feel, which I expect to be a 6 or a 7 out of 10. That's right. my
a 6 or a 7 out of 10 that's really enjoyable.
Yeah. That's what I'm hoping for. I'm hoping for a Dynasty Warriors, basically. That's my my quality hope for this.
I mean, it'll stand a decent chance if it can carry over the crunchy combat from the first game.
Yeah, and I hope it technically performs well, as in doesn't break on your computer or your console, because we've had a lot of games recently that break on your computer or your console. That's been a rough year for that. There's another game that I think it's going to be a rough year for, called Skull and Bones.
What?
Sorry, anytime someone mentions the title of that game, I just laugh now.
They're still doing that?
Skull and Bones, that's our reaction every time we hear about Skull and Bones, which is set to release on the 9th of March, 2023.
Wow.
I don't trust him anymore.
that release date has gone through so many revisions, and this game has consistently, I would say, lacked an identity to the point of it being concerning. Every time it shows up, how little of an identity that it has.
You know what I really want? Just that would just be hilarious.
Yep.
Some other sleeper hit pirate themed or ship warfare themed game to come out right before that.
And I will shout out here a game I've been playing a little bit way back when. There was an indie game called Salt. And Salt is a survival indie game that came out way back in the big boom of survival indie games a few years ago. And it had pirate ships that you could get. Salt 2 is now in development. Salt 1 finished and released and is totally fine. It's a fine game with good ideas that clearly had a super limited budget. Salt 2 has big customizable pirate ships, Sea of Thieves style. The big difference is that you don't actually have any naval combat in the game. It's all about exploring and doing island-based things. But because of that limitation, the island-based things are way more fun. So I feel like the issue we're going to have here is Sea of Thieves is already monopolized the multiplayer pirate genre, right? I don't think Sea of Thieves audience is going to leave to play Skull and Bones. So you're really looking at the audience of people that want just a random pirate game, which is a lot of people, but most of those people want single-player pirate games, I think.
Yeah.
or they want Assassin's Creed Black Flag. Which
See,
this
that's
is
the thing.
definitely not.
I feel like if you wanna like get into that like pirate video game scene, you have to come at it from a single player angle. Because like you said, uh, uh, Sea of Thieves that has the multiplayer pirate game. Like that's it.
Yeah.
It doesn't unless something comes out that really like just dwarfs it both in terms of like gameplay and also popularity. It's going to be really hard to reach that part. So if you
I
come
just
at it
don't
from
think
like a
there's
single player
player
perspective.
base for a multiplayer pirate game that doesn't have more involved combat and more things you can do on foot. I feel like people looking for vehicular games already have those in like War Thunder and World of Warships and whatnot. And there's really popular free-to-play games that, of course, are free to play, so there's no barrier to entry. So
it's also like I could see the scenario happening like, oh, I don't play a lot of these kinds of games, but this game looks cool and I'm gonna play it with one of my friends who does play a lot of these games. And then you play it and it sucks, and your friend says, oh well, why don't you've never been interested until now, why don't you just come play a better version of this with me? We can go play World of Warships or Sea of Thieves or whatever. There's literally like sometimes like well, most of the time, it's like when you really jadedly look at something like this and you say the words "dead on arrival," you usually get proved wrong. I literally don't see this game like this feels like a Square Enix Final Fantasy: The First Soldier. It'll be supported for less than a year, and then the live services will be shut down because
You're talking
it's
about
not
Skull
gonna
and
be
that's what I
Bones, right?
suspect.
Not Salt.
Skull and
or-
Bones, not
Skull and
Salt.
Bones.
Yeah,
Salt is
yeah.
not a multiplayer game. It's single player pirate game just without the naval combat, but you still have a ship that you customize, which I think hits what people want in terms of a pirate-ish themed game where you can do on-foot stuff. But I think that the thing that is missing for a lot of people who want pirate games is people grew up on Sid Meier's Pirates. And there has yet to be a game which even just does the same thing as Sid Meier's Pirates, but looks better. Which is stunning to me, because it got things perfect. I don't know if any of you have played that game, but it still holds up, and it's from like 2003.
So I know Monkey Island had the verbal jousting. Did Sid Meier's also have verbal jousting?
Yeah, Sid Meier's had like mini games, so you didn't have actual on foot exploration, but you had boarding, and you had things like it where you'd kind of end up playing these like sword fighting, not like mini games, but they had sword fighting and other things you would do, and you had like a dancing game to befriend nobles and whatnot, and you could do all sorts of random things about the cities, and there was a story to follow, all sorts of crazy stuff. And just nothing has ever had that depth in terms of things you could do, and it's not even that high of a bar. Like, it is a pretty low bar because it was like 6 things, but nothing has done the pirate thing and had more than you can attack a settlement and you can attack ships. Those are your 2 pirate things you can do, and those are the only pirate things that pirates ever do. So you can't do anything else.
And I think, and going back to Sea of Thieves again, like, the other thing that game does so well is it's super immersive, right? It's got this super minimalist UI. Everything you do in the game is very analog and hands-on. There isn't a lot of like sifting through menus and stuff unless you're customizing your ship or your character, which you're not doing all that much. And so again, if you want that pirate game, not only is it just a good game in and of itself, it's a super immersive pirate experience, right? And if this it just feels like you're in your set like little area that you're playing in, and then it's a bunch of menus to get to the next thing again. At least that's how they made it seem. And I just feel like
that's the other problem, is we don't know what this game is. Like, that's the real issue here, is they've shown like little bits of this game and like little cordoned off sections that there's been so little confidence talking about these segments that we don't actually know what this game is going to play like. And I think that's a big problem of, you could have an audience for this, but we need to know what the game is before that audience actually exists. I just feel like it's been super hard to ever hype yourself up for any aspect of this game, because like, I don't know what the ship combat's going to be like. They've shown bits of it that looked kind of like a worse Assassin's Creed Black Flag, and that doesn't really make me excited. They showed maybe on foot, but not actually in any kind of combat situation, just wandering around shopkeepers. So I don't know.
And it's like, you guys,
it's super unconvincing, I think, is the big word.
Yeah, and Ubisoft, you guys have a template for a good pirate game. It's called Assassin's Creed 4. It's probably one of like it's probably a lot of people's favorite, right? It's like one of the most standout titles in the series. It's one that got you guys a ton of praise. You have the blueprint for this. I don't understand why you felt the need to strip things back. I don't. It's so odd. So many bizarre decisions being made. And also, people's trust in Ubisoft, I feel like, is at an all-time low. So when it feels like what Ryan said, there's such a lack of confidence coming through in how they've talked about this game and how they've marketed this game, that I feel like there's so little trust in the studio as well. And it's not looking good. It's not looking good.
And I would be happy to be proven wrong. This is, I think, the biggest game for me where I would very gladly eat all of my words and say this is a great game, because I want a really good pirate game. But nothing they have shown me has convinced me that it will be. They've shown me things that, hey, maybe there's something there. Maybe there's a little bit of a thing that I can get excited about. But then there's always tempered by, oh, this game's been delayed however many times it has been at this point.
Well, it's that, and there's the one little thing where it's
identity.
Like, oh, you can tell that this is going to be a fraction of what the game is and or wants to be, and you don't know if it's worth even trying it to find that.
Yeah, and I don't even know. I don't know if it's fantasy or if it's historical. Like, it looks like some weird in between. It's just a very strange amalgamation of things that doesn't personally excite me, though I hope that changes. I don't know that it will. It's also notably sandwiched in between the new Destiny expansion, which I feel like a lot of the player base is probably going to overlap with Destiny in terms of people that enjoy these multiplayer types of games. I think a lot of Destiny players like a lot of multiplayer games, and so I feel like a lot of that audience would be interested in this, except Lightfall's coming out 2 weeks before.
Lightfall, we get a grappling hook grenade, and it's already taken all of our money. Please don't ask us for anything else.
Yeah, and 2 weeks after, Star Wars Jedi Survivor. So AAA games, there's a lot of competition here. And we'll see if anything else lands in that March window, because there's a lot of stuff that we don't have dates for. It just weird game. All right. Moving on from the strange zone of Skull and Bones. Talk about Star Wars Jedi Survivor.
Yeah.
Week and a half after Skull and Bones. We don't know a ton about this game.
I can say something that we do know that I can say now, since I didn't last time, is that now the main character looks more like Alex than he does Wyatt. Which I could not stop. The entire time they were showing the trailer at the Game Awards, I was just like, this is... Finally, I get to play as Alex LaFella in a video game. It's my dream.
That's what we always wanted.
Yeah. I see it.
Oh, no. Is there a mod where I can make him like 5 inches shorter to actually be me?
I do want to mention a few unique things that we know about that are in this game that have a lot of gameplay implications. Our mounts is a big one.
Oh?
That means we're probably going to have a more wide open playing area, at least for a few things. I don't know if that'll be like open world. I don't want to throw that term out there because it's so loaded, and I highly doubt this is going to be an open world game.
Would you want to say modular open world like Elden Ring?
I would think like Dishonored is where I'm thinking, like large levels that have a little bit more open sections. Because
I mean, I could see the areas being roughly the same size as the first game. It's just the way that they're designed; they're less. Yeah,
I feel like more open than the first game, because the first game
I would
really
be completely
corridor-driven gameplay, which was fine.
Which I would be completely fine with. Yeah,
I would like to see some more open like physics playgrounds for force powers, which it kind of seems like they're going to lean into. I've also heard a bunch of people thinking that gameplay here might be substantially different from what it was in Fallen Order, because it looks like you're taking on a lot more enemies at once in the gameplay that they've shown. And
you're thinking we get to force powers akin to Force Unleashed?
I don't think Force Unleashed levels, but I think we're going to start moving in that direction a little bit and not stick with the Souls-like.
Well, that's my thing, is that I feel like the Souls-like elements that they tried to shove into the first game felt very awkward.
They felt tacked on, and it really didn't matter very much.
Like it's so bizarre how oh, you're at a meditation spot, now all the enemies are back. What? Huh? How? Like, that's a smaller example, but it makes you ask far too many questions about how that's all supposed to work.
Yeah, I just think what they have to get right, you need to have really good one-on-one duels, because that's the lightsaber duel. You gotta have peak lightsaber duels, which I'd imagine they're gonna get right, because they felt good in Fallen Order. I don't think they're gonna backpedal. So
Do you think that this could also lean into the more lethal nature of the lightsaber when you're not going up against another lightsaber wielding foe? And I mean, like
I would
that
think
could be
so.
that could
Well,
definitely be expressed in the animations being maybe, I don't know, for some reason Cal Kestis isn't going for a killing blow right away, like like he's grazing arms and stuff to slow down
Well, we know
before
a
the
lot of
killing
that
blows.
was that there was
Like that.
a mandate to not have dismemberment in Fallen
Really?
Order past like certain robotic enemies and very specific situations that were like story important.
Was that to keep
Um,
ratings something?
partly
To
and partly Disney owns Star Wars now, so the
Mhm.
rules are a little bit different. But at the same time, if anyone here has seen recent Star Wars shows, they're walking that back a good deal and starting to
I would
lean more
hope
into
so.
into the strengths of a lightsaber being a main thing of Star Wars. So I don't think this game will have the same limitation. So I'd imagine we see a few more wild things going on. Whether or not it's a regular thing, I don't know, but it definitely looked like in the gameplay trailers there was a little bit more oomph to the combat.
I did
I'm
also.
an enjoyer of oomph.
And I'm going back and I'm looking at that official reveal trailer that had like little snippets of gameplay in it,
Mm-hmm.
and I do see that you have some sort of move that combos with another character, which is probably going to be like
Yep.
an NPC controlled character. So I mean, hey, if we get little NPC buddies that
Give me a
travel along with
JRPG
you,
party in a Star Wars game, and ooh, we're getting closer and closer to
Ryan
KOTOR.
Ryan and I have talked about our love of having NPCs in your video games. For me, it's nice to have people just bounce dialogue off of while you're doing other things.
But it also
You
means
know,
that you avoid the like Aloy talking to herself issue of
yes.
just sounding awkward by having someone else who you can talk to and be like, "Hey, why is this important?" It's the classic game thing of like you have companion characters like this, so that way when you give exposition to the player, it can be given to a character, and so it doesn't feel out of place, right?
Yes. And and if there are more enemies, it's because I'm looking at the footage. I am seeing more enemies than we typically got in encounters in the first game, and that would
Yeah.
kind of line up if they wanted to make the lightsaber feel a bit more lethal, right? So it's like, okay, well maybe it'll take less hits to kill, uh regular enemies just to make the lightsaber feel more powerful, which I would be completely a-okay
Yeah,
with.
I'm thinking a little bit less Dark Souls and a little bit more God of War is how we might be leaning here.
I mean,
More
listen,
towards
that doesn't bother me
Mm.
in the slightest. I'm fine with that.
I started playing Ragnarok, and I'm very happy with how they kept for the most part your progression from the last game as far as skills go.
Yeah.
With
Which I hope is something they carry over into here as well.
And I would love to see my big thing with the first game that I didn't love is how the different lightsaber forms were handled once you got multiple lightsaber loadouts of you could have like the dual blade, you could have two lightsabers. They didn't feel super necessary at any point or really have very distinct gameplay differences. So I would like to see more leaning into that, and it definitely looked like there was some gameplay of different styles here that seemed a little bit more varied. So I'm excited for that. I think it looks fun. All right, moving on to our other big ticket release in that time of the year, we have Hogwarts Legacy.
yeah.
Oh,
It's coming out in the first half.
Yeah, it's
of-
April, so it's only a few weeks after Jedi Survivor. I don't know. I think it's interesting.
We keep seeing commercials for this when wrestling is on.
Yeah.
My mom,
Really?
multiple weeks in a row, keeps asking me if I'm interested in it or not. She's my mom. I've never cared about Harry Potter in my life.
That
Why
means
would I
she's
start?
interested.
That's what I'm like. So I've been like, do you want? I'll like, if you pay for it, I will play it and you can watch. That's fine. I don't care. But like, I don't know. Make your mom code more clear. But I don't. I personally don't really care. Not even because of like any of the controversy or anything. Just like I said, I'm not a Harry Potter guy. I don't know, but if it's really good, maybe I'll dabble. But
Did it
I
come
just
into
I
Game
haven't
Pass, or
cared.
am
I
I not
think
remembering
that's
that
fake
correctly?
news.
I
Oh,
think
I think you
okay.
made that up.
Yeah, that
I
was
did?
a hallucination.
I hope it
That would not
does.
be
I
the
would love
first
if it
time.
does, but
That would not be the first time.
I feel like this would be a good Game Pass game. This is a Game Pass
Mhm.
seller if it arrives on Game Pass. Yeah, I can get behind the idea of a Hogwarts game. I don't know that Hogwarts Legacy is the one.
I can get behind the idea of a wizard game. With
What I really
wands.
can, what I am excited for is I really don't care about the combat in this game.
Really, you don't care about it?
No, because my thing with a Hogwarts game, like I grew up on Harry Potter, so regardless of all the disagreements I have about J.K. Rowling as a person, I am interested in seeing Hogwarts fully realized in a video game because I played like the old GameCube Chamber of Secrets game tons and tons when I was a kid, and the like Lego games. So I think getting an actually fully realized version of Hogwarts in a video game would be an achievement, even if the rest of the game is terrible. Like I honestly think this game only needs to get Hogwarts right.
I would
From what I
enjoy
have seen, and the way that, because I've watched like all the gameplay, the 45-minute gameplay segments they've put out talking about it, the team cares about it, which sells me on the idea that they probably will get this right. So I think just on the basis of having a cool explorable Hogwarts and surrounding area, I'm in. And they showed that you could ride magical creatures. I'm like, all right, I want to ride the magical creatures.
I would really enjoy if there's some element of time management to this game besides the waiting for
Yeah.
stuff in the room requirement. But like, being on time for classes and things, and I'm late to class because of
They
that
talked about
stupid
that.
moving staircase.
So I in the second gameplay video they did, they talked about the idea of classes and how they were handling it, and that they didn't want this to feel like a simulator and that you have to be on time for your classes all the time. But what they said is that the game will mandate that you have a certain amount of these classes that you go to like progress the story, meet your teachers and whatnot. And then beyond that, it is up to the player in terms of what they want to continue to engage with.
That's really cool.
So I think that's a pretty good middle ground of, we're going to make you go to like one class of everything, and then you have the option to like get new spells and whatnot by doing them.
Semi-story gated, I guess.
Amount of stuff here. Like, they had a big screen with a big grid of spells, so there's a lot you can learn here. In the old Hogwarts games, they only ever had like 10 spells total, but you got a lot of usage out of them because they all were like platforming tools or Metroidvania style unlock mechanisms, which it seems like that's where this game is going to lean. What I also really liked that I think a lot of people would be concerned about is the idea of, hey, it'd be really cool to play with the unforgivable curses as a character in combat.
That's right.
That's a fun combat idea. But as a player, I don't necessarily want to be aligning myself with dark wizards, right? Well, they had an answer to that, was that we're going to have like these little combat challenges that are really removed from the narrative and everything, and removed from the story, and are completely like, they're video game, right? This is a video game VR mission from Metal Gear style thing, where you are doing a combat mission in just like a little arena, and they're like, we're just gonna give you set loadouts of spells for these, so you can go crazy with all sorts of crazy spells.
So you have loadouts of spells.
Yeah, so you like select your spells before combat, and you can choose which ones you want mapped to what buttons. They said like they're for the killing curse, so they're gonna do a thing where it is basically a one-shot kill on every enemy in the game, but they're gonna have just a time limit, so they're leaving it a cooldown. So it will be like a super overpowered thing, but you're not gonna be able to use it constantly unless you like spec into it, which I want to know what that looks like. I want to know what specking into
a one-shot kill
in Hogwarts Legacy looks like, because they
really
talked about it like it was a Destiny build.
Oh my god!
I was like, is this where we're going with this? Are we gonna have like build crafting in Hogwarts Legacy?
What's your wizard grenade stat?
Yeah, what's going on here? So I'm very curious about this. I think it's an interesting looking game.
Well, I feel like imagine if you could be more of an alchemist or a fortune teller. than
I'm
Blizzard.
so curious. I'm so curious if this is going to come out and be like a 3 or a 9. Who knows?
Ryan, I have to know.
I think this for me is the one that's the biggest question mark. If I don't know whether or not this game is going to be well received or not. And actually, this is in February. So the April release I was talking about is the PlayStation 4 and Xbox One release. February is the next gen console release, or current gen console release for PS5, Xbox Series X, and PC. Yeah, I think
Did you know?
looks fun.
Did you know Harry also only casts one spell in the first movie?
You know, he only casts one spell in like most of the movies.
Yeah, that's
he really
why
uses
I'm
like 3 spells total.
Oh no, I don't mean like one spell repetitively. I mean one spell. He uses his wand with
Look,
words
CG's
once.
expensive.
I mean, to his credit, he does a lot of other cool fantasy stuff. I mean, he stabs a giant snake through the mouth with a sword.
He is the only person in that movie to ever use a sword.
Yeah.
He flies on flying horse bird creatures.
That you can only see if you've seen dead people.
No, those are different. Those are
yeah, that's the other
Kestrels.
ones.
Those are different.
Oh, you're talking about hippogriffs.
Hippogriffs, right.
That's why I'm kind of like understanding of Ryan's idea of not really giving a crap of how the combat is, because
it's nonsense,
watches
right?
or
It doesn't
reads
matter.
Harry Potter for like it's literally just like whee, and like a lightning bolt flies out and whatever gets hit by it is turned to ash.
Yeah.
If it doesn't get turned to ash,
not Leviosa.
it's Voldemort, and he's going to turn you to ash. There's no like dual like there's
Most
one
of the
like dual back and
gameplay-
forth at the very end of the series, and that's like it.
Oh yeah, that's
Most
right.
of the
Wait,
gameplay of the
someone-
other Harry Potter games are puzzles. They're almost entirely puzzle games, not
That's-
action games.
Well, wait a second. And we were talking about the just how stupid this world is. So there's the killing curse, which is the one-shot kill curse spell. There's a disintegrate spell that works on people, and it has before. You can just disintegrate someone, and it's not counted as a sin.
Harry Potter is full of nonsense rules. I mean, this is why a video game Harry Potter has always been a wacky idea, just because you don't have any rules to follow, which is exciting and also terrifying. Right?
Yeah.
As a developer, you're like, well, how do I balance anything here? I honestly just think you don't. You just give up and just make it fun. That's really all that I'm looking for, is that it's fun. I would be pretty disappointed if this game is too balanced in terms of being like a quote unquote balanced experience. I don't need a balanced experience Harry Potter game. All right, we got some other stuff coming out this year that I think are interesting picks for a number of reasons. I'm gonna throw out an oddball, but I don't know if anyone has played the other game in this franchise, Kerbal Space Program 2.
It always seems
I've watched people
interesting
play it
to me that they would need to make a second one of these because it's Kerbal Space. What else? What more is there to do?
now
Brett,
with
we
an
can
in-depth
do
reaction
more.
to the Challenger disaster.
The little Kerbal people are now in 4K, Brett. They have 4K skin pores.
Oh no!
They can explode more
It's
realistically.
the one thing that everyone was asking for.
You can now realistically watch as a poor little Kerbal person.
Yeah, it's also not by the same
in
devs.
atmosphere upon re-entry.
I just throw this one out to remind people that it exists, really, and to... I don't know what I was hoping from this. I don't know what I'm hoping for when it releases. I don't know that I'm going to play it, ever, but, I'm interested to see if people do. I think is my stance on this.
I'll be interested in watching things blow up in it, unfortunately.
Yeah, I think it's just wild. I'm looking forward to seeing the memes when Kerbal Space Program 2 comes out, more so than anything else. All right. We got a PC port of The Last of Us Part 1 coming.
Yeah,
I'm now
happy...
it has to be called The Last of Us Part 1.
I'm happy that PC players are finally getting it. I understand that it's a weird fit for PC. For PS5, I mean, because we had the PS4 remaster, and that's really
good
all
fit for PC.
Agreed. Which is why bringing it to PS5 kind of makes sense. You want to have a nice shiny looking version for the PC. Why not bring it to PS5 as well. But I'm glad that they're getting it, and I really hope that they get part 2 at some point as well.
Yeah, I
I'm very
imagine it
surprised
will.
Spider-Man
Yeah.
came to PC before Last of Us did.
Well,
It's
I
all
mean,
advertising. You got to think in terms of advertisers here. It's all advertising the PS5 so they can play Spider-Man 2 when it comes out, right?
Yeah.
That's the point of getting Spider-Man Miles Morales and Spider-Man Remastered on PC, is so people will want to play 2 when it comes out. Same with
Sony
Last of
wants
Us Part
you
1.
Sony wants you to get hooked in their library. It's like, hey, wow, look at that. God of War, Last of Us Part 1, Spider-Man. These are all pretty good games.
Can we offer
You
you
wanna-
games not from the PS3 in our
You
subscription
wanna
service?
you wanna play some more of these cool games? Come here. Come on over here. Buy a PS5. It doesn't matter if you can't find one. Buy one. It doesn't matter.
I don't want one! Get out of my house! Get out of Yeah. All right, we got a few Xbox picks to talk about here. Some Game Pass Day 1 games coming out. Redfall. We have those. We
right.
haven't really recently, but we will.
That's right. Microsoft owns Bethesda now.
Yeah.
Redfall is Arcane. Completely different.
Oh.
Yeah, Redfall's Arcane.
You had me fooled.
They're under the
it's-
ZeniMax umbrella, I think. But
yeah.
Arcane developing Redfall, the vampire co-op, maybe immersive sim first-person shooter, was set to launch this year, then got pushed into the first half of 2023. We don't actually have a specific release date for this yet, I don't believe. But Q1, Q2, 2023 is the listed release date. I think this has looked pretty interesting. The more they've shown it, the more I've been curious about how this is going to play. Because it appears to be set in like this open world town area of Massachusetts, which is a cool
Open
idea.
World, Massachusetts.
Open world Massachusetts. I mean, we've had a few. We got Fallout, Massachusetts. So I'm interested in this game. I'm a little nervous in that I'm worried this won't play well alone.
Mm-hmm.
I'm excited to play this with people because it's on Game Pass, so I imagine at least Wyatt and I are going to be interested in playing this game.
Yeah.
But I mean, the majority of your time playing a game like this, I think, is generally spent single player. So I'm wondering if this game is going to hold up single player well as being a good co-op game. I don't know that matters too much in terms of it being fun, but it will matter in terms of longevity. So that's the biggest question mark for me. But aside from that, this has looked good. So,
and you know what? This weird guilty pleasure that I have, not guilty pleasure, I don't know the right word, but I like it when a movie or game or whatever has vampires and don't make them like kind of pale looking humans, where they really like make them more monstrous looking, is where I get more interested in like a vampire's design. And it seems like it's kind of going down that route. It's like a really small detail, like kind of dumb detail, but it's something that I like when we can make vampires look more like actual beasts than just like humans that haven't had enough, vitamin D that day.
Yeah. I'm super curious to see how this game will actually play as a whole, because I think the individual bits that they've shown off have looked good. Whether or not they'll come together as a cohesive unit. At the same time, this is what everyone thought of Deathloop, and Deathloop was received pretty well, so maybe it'll be fine. Maybe it's completely senseless worrying, but hey, hopefully it's good. Fingers crossed for Redfall.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it for sure.
Starfield.
Yes.
Speaking of fingers crossed, holy crap!
Yeah.
It's like this. Whole hand.
I got the toes. I got the eyes. Everything's crossed.
I got the arms.
Everything's crossed.
God.
Yeah. I hope this game is well received. I don't need this to be anything more than Skyrim in space. I've made that acceptance already. If this is just Fallout 4 but with a space setting, I'm okay with that because I want a space video game. I'll accept mediocre.
I didn't really like Fallout 4. I don't know if I'd be okay with that.
Oh, I didn't love Fallout 4 either, but to me, space as a setting is so interesting, and particularly space as an RPG setting and not just a simulator setting. Because I play a lot of space games. Most space games are empty space number simulators where you truck from place to place, and that can be
the
fun.
epitome of this.
It can be fun, but at the same time, like, it's hard to do an RPG in space because people don't want to commit to a setting, right? It's hard to commit to one specific area. And this might be Starfield's problem too, because they've proven they're not committing to doing just one section of a solar system or something. They're doing the whole 1,000 planets.
They've done
thing.
the exact opposite.
They've done the exact opposite, but it has factions, it has characters that you speak to, and it has RPG character building. Those are 3 elements that I'm very, very happy to see, and as long as those work at a bare minimum, that's the level I want here. I just want it functions.
Yeah.
Not even it functions well, just that it functions.
And from what we've been seeing too, that it seems like there's definitely an attempt to kind of go back to like more classic Bethesda RPGs and remove a lot of the streamlined elements that I feel like they've added in over the past 5-10 years.
Yeah, make it a little bit more complex. Come on, let's get all those different class structures. I want to see what the agent class has to offer.
I think that's
a reason to replay the game, right?
I think that's what most people.
The thing.
Yeah.
If I choose a certain path, I want to be able to just not do things in the game. Cut me off from content if I'm a fascist or something.
I shouldn't be the archmage and the leader of the companions.
Yeah,
that's a weird thing to do.
I'm coming at this from literally not having engaged in a single Bethesda RPG in my entire life. I just want good space game, but I did not. I got okay space game with Outer Worlds, which is like the closest thing to a Bethesda style RPG in space. It's just it wasn't space enough. It was just RPG, and it had like the set dressing.
Outer Worlds was almost fantasy in what it was doing, because it's space, but it's goofy. This is hard sci-fi. Starfield is hard sci-fi, Brad.
I have like an SMG that looks like it could play like a VHS in it if I wanted to.
You also have an SMG that has like numbers printed not on a screen but on itself.
They're beveled. The edges are beveled at angles at around the 45-degree mark and are made of metal. This is space, and it looks like space. I just want it. Yeah. Ooh, so many RPGs, a lot of JRPGs especially, we're space, and you guys still carrying around a sword. Like if I see a bladed weapon in this game, I'm turning it off. It's not space enough. I want to fire like a railgun at someone from 60 miles away and watch their body evaporate.
What if there's space combat, but you just lightly shiv someone's suit open and they go buzzing off in the opposite direction because of the decompression?
We don't have the budget for that. Starfield will not have that. Don't get your hopes up.
They've tried.
It won't.
They tried. It didn't work.
Did you know that? Well, of course, Ryan knows this. You watched the 20-hour Skyrim retrospective.
Yeah.
A horse riding almost wasn't in Skyrim because they couldn't get it to work. Right.
Yeah. My hope is at this point they have figured out the engine enough, which I think they probably have. I feel like they've had to have had the time, because the thing about the Gamebryo, the creation engine, whatever you want to call it, the weird amalgam engine that Bethesda uses, is that as poorly as it works at some things, it works really well for others. And the thing that you gain by using this jank engine is the ability for other people to create content for your game. And that's not worth giving up, right? That's the thing that they can't afford to give up, and really shouldn't, because I think that's what makes the magic of a Bethesda game is modding. And the ability for them to rapidly create new content for expansions. So I think as long as this has a good baseline and is just fun to play, that's the big thing. Is they just need to hit the baseline of the shooting here needs to feel as good or a little better than Fallout 4. That I think is the real mark of succeeding as an FPS while also being a good RPG. And I don't necessarily mean like you have to hit something and a headshot and it dies in one hit, because I want numbers. It should be an RPG. But it's got to look and feel good. So
Yeah.
hopefully it hits that. And all the images they've shown, all the stuff that they've shown of like the in development footage, the snippets of different areas you can go to have all looked really good. So I'm just hoping that we can hit that baseline. And the good thing about space games is it's not going to bother me to re-see the same architecture over and over again, because I can totally buy in a hard sci-fi setting that we'd be cheaply 3D printing
Of course.
all the stuff we'd be using. So I won't be bothered to see the same space station layout everywhere,
It
right? Because
gives
that
you-
makes sense. It makes logical sense.
It gives you an
So-
excuse to reuse your assets, right? And again,
Yep.
as we've said before, not that that's always a bad thing, but as long as it's utilized properly, and in a situation like that, you know, it's completely justifiable, just in terms of the lore alone.
Yeah. So I really hope. I know I sound like I have high hopes for Starfield. I really don't. I just want it to be functional. That's the thing, because it's so perfectly themed around what I want in a game that, like, if it hits the bare minimum of being playable and is like a 5 out of 10, I'll probably really enjoy it.
I'm sure
That's
they'd love
where
to see
Bethesda's
that.
at this point. That's where Bethesda's at this point.
I mean, yeah, that's why I say it, because it's definitely, you know, I think that might be a maybe realistic goal for them to work towards before Elder Scrolls 6 becomes, I'm sure, a nightmare.
Unavoidable at this point.
It's unavoidable. Too much hype around it.
And
Yeah.
as we've said, I think we were talking about this when this was first revealed, but I feel like, man, if Starfield isn't good, Bethesda's in trouble.
It's gonna
Bethesda
be hard to come back from that.
is in
Yeah.
trouble
Yeah.
because they need a win right now, and this one's been in development for so long, and they've been hyping it up for so long. They were able to kind of survive the Fallout 76 backlash, but I feel like with this, there's no, you know, there's nothing to run behind this time.
And it would be a tragedy because it's clear, like, the way they talk about Starfield compared to the way they talked about, like, Fallout 76 and even Fallout 4, like, this is Todd Howard's dream game child that he has
this is the one that he has
conceived
always
in his-
wanted to make.
Yes.
This
If
is what
this
Elder
doesn't
Scrolls was a
work-
stepping stone to.
Yeah. If this doesn't work, then
The next step in video game evolution.
And like,
we
how
may never
many
see that man again?
and like how many notable, or you know what, how many game developers out there that are in the position that Todd Howard is in is able to make the video game of their dream? Like, how many people have been given that opportunity? How many people have actually been able to pull it off? You know, that number gets so much smaller. I feel like.
mean, there is a man who made Balin Wonderworld, and he wanted to make that
no.
game.
And we all
Just
know what
because it has
happened
the
with him.
same title as it did in your dream doesn't mean it was your dream.
It was
game.
your dream game. That was his nightmare game. For sure. Yeah, I have hope for Starfield, I think largely because Bethesda hasn't really given us a reason to doubt that it will at least be a game. Right?
Yeah,
That's
be able to push a button and it'll do something.
they haven't tried to sell us on
Oh, man.
multiplayer at all, which I'm
Don't.
really
If
happy about.
they do, I really don't. If they try to do that, I feel like I'm gonna jump ship immediately.
I
can't-
believe they have
I
said
can't do
Starfield will
multiplayer.
intentionally support a lot of modding, which is a good thing. And I think the thing to remember here is when Skyrim came out, it took a while for the creation kit to actually launch. It was like a year afterwards, so it's not going to come out immediately, I imagine. But the intent for it to be there, I think, is representing a lot of goodwill. The big question for me, and I want to throw this to Alex especially, do you think before mod tools come out, we're going to have an indication of paid modding? And I'm not necessarily talking Creation Club, because I think they've learned from Creation Club. I think the existence of Skyrim Anniversary Edition proves that Creation Club failed for what they wanted it to be, because the whole storefront thing just didn't work. It was not a sell to people. But do they try again for a paid modding platform, or have they given up?
The optimist says that they they haven't given up per se, but that they've learned not to try to
They've
execute
learned
it in
their
that
lesson.
manner. Yeah.
Because I think the thing
It's not a
I
give
would
up
be
like,
down
oh, we want to
for-
try again, but oh well. It's an, oh, okay, we see that this didn't work.
I would be okay with
Don't
like
do it.
single quest DLC if it was made by the Bethesda developers with a guaranteed like quality seal, right?
Yeah.
That's always been the problem with paid modding is you never know what you're getting, and paid mods were often just worse than regular mods.
I believe with the anniversary edition there was a lot of something was going on with one of the paid modders that they had was like with everything that they made, it was a majority of player homes was just going completely against canon or something like that.
Well, it also happened on the Nintendo Switch version of Anniversary Edition.
Oh.
They didn't fix the texture compression, I believe was the issue when it launched, and so in certain areas of the game you would drop to like 2 frames a second because they didn't compress the textures right for the Switch, and so they just didn't work. Which has since been fixed, but yeah, I think there was a whole slew of issues that came from it not being internal Bethesda content. Not to say that mods are bad, but that mods inherently don't have the QA testing that often goes into a full game release.
Yeah.
And I know Bethesda and QA testing is a controversial statement.
Yeah.
But I think if we got like smaller DLCs that were a few quest lines or something that weren't an expansion, but was somewhere between an expansion and a DLC, not any kind of micro DLC, but like a regular DLC, I'd be okay with that as long as it was Bethesda made.
I also have a question. Well, I guess going
We'll
off
see.
of that, how much would you be willing to pay for something like that?
I mean, it depends. Like I'm imagining if they release an expansion the size of Hearthfire, that's kind of what I'm thinking. Is like Hearthfire style expansions, where it's a content system that is relatively bug free, adds a new thing to do in the game, and works pretty well. I'd be happy to pay a couple bucks for that. I'd pay Hearthfire's like, what was it, $10 when it came out, $7, something like that. I would be fine with that. I wouldn't necessarily be super happy about it, but I'd be okay with it as long as we get like a big expansion. Like I want to see a Shivering Isles for Starfield.
But you'd want that as an in between big expansions.
I'd be okay with it. I don't need it, but I'm thinking if Bethesda wants the paid mod money, that's the way to go. Is actually just develop DLC for your game, and not do the user created content for money, because it definitely hasn't worked any of the other times they've done it. So hopefully that's the route they go if they do. All right, let's move on to the next set of games to talk about. I'm gonna bring up. I don't know if calling this a dead horse is right, or maybe a horse that was never alive, but Avatar Frontiers of Pandora.
What?
Is slated for release sometime between April of 2023 and 2024. It was slated for release this year, and then got pushed, and then got pushed again. Will this come out in 2023?
Man, Ubisoft is their number of like games stuck in development hell has been noticeably rising over the past couple of years.
A little scary, huh?
Kinda. Maybe they need to take a game dev laxative. They seem a little constipated. I don't know. I don't know why that's the analogy that came into my mind for that. They just got to get it out, get things out, and it'll be the usual Ubisoft get things out state.
Because this is developed by Massive, and Massive tends to make some pretty quality things. They did the Division, which I think both of which was pretty well received.
Has anyone ever said they needed or wanted an Avatar? Not the last.
That's my question. That is my like hang up with this.
I think there's no matter what you have to say about Avatar the movie, I think most people, even people who weren't crazy about the movie, loved that world. And I feel like it was never really expanded upon that much.
What I was gonna say, what world? It's described as alien planet with mineral people want.
But I mean, there was a lot of to give the movie credit. There was a lot of work done to like kind of flesh out the Na'vi as a culture, and it just the world looked cool. Like a lot of it was really inspired by like aquatic, flora and fauna, which I think is really interesting. Very obviously visually fantastic as well. And so I feel like I can't say that I'm like necessarily one of them, but I think there's a lot of people who would be interested in an open world Avatar game just because they like that world and they want to spend more time in that world.
Also of note
Right?
is that this is a first person game.
I just don't get it. I literally don't get it. The way that I've come to think
It's like
about
is this gonna be Far Cry Primal but Avatar? Is that what we're gonna get?
Yeah, there's
It's just going to be visual spectacle and nothing else of substance.
Like,
Is
I
what I'm
understand
expecting from it.
I understand that Avatar is pretty, but the place on the place on Avatar that my brain has landed towards like the I say the most recent installment, the other one like came out recently, but where my brain has landed on is that it's like okay, it's pretty, but like
That's it.
every single thing that it is built up on has been done better somewhere else before.
Yeah.
And it's built up to just become like nothing. There's nothing here. It's pretty.
Mhm.
A lot of things are pretty. If I want giant robots, we got a probably pretty solid giant robot game coming out later this year too. If I want open world game with a weird alien world, do you know how many of those we have already? Do you know how many games have floating islands already that people thought that was cool 10 years ago, so they already put them in their games? The opportunity to do these things for the first time is gone. And I don't know what like it's the same thing, or at least a similar situation as Skull and Bones, where it's like the people who could be interested might play this for a little bit and someone be like, oh, if you like this part of that Avatar game, just if you like flying through those floating islands or whatever, here's Ace Combat 7's been out for however many years at this point. Go play that.
And this isn't even going to be the only open world game that has floating islands in it. I'm sure we're probably going to at least touch on Tears of the Kingdom later in this episode.
Yeah, which whole selling point is big floating islands.
Yeah.
I think I don't know. There's no unless you're James Cameron, there's no reason to play Avatar as a video game. I was just gonna say unless you are a diehard Avatar fan.
The problem to me as a game designer when I think about this game is that there is too much to do, right? I can't nail any one gameplay system for this because no matter what I think of, it's going to disappoint someone else because it's not what they think Avatar is. Because everyone thinks Avatar is something different or they think it's nothing. There's no in between, right? Avatar as a setting does not have the one cohesive thing I think of maybe if you're playing as the Na'vis. You have the hair tentacle that you stick into things. That's how you interact with the vehicle equivalent. I don't know.
You interact with animals by having sex with them to fly.
Well,
yeah, it's
that's an Alex take.
Oh no! It's having hair sex with animals to fly.
No,
I had to watch I had to watch the original Avatar movie again recently, and it's just that all their interactions just.
I'm just imagining like the interact sound of you getting into like a warthog in Halo is like the vroom of like the engine revving. You getting on to like the pink and blue dragon things is just like the cartoon like sound effect.
It's Scorn.
Yes. If you like Avatar, go play Scorn.
Oh man.
Go make some baby paste.
Oh my god.
Oh Jesus Christ.
Wow. What a video game. I'm not convinced this game is real. I don't know that it actually exists.
Nope.
I won't believe it's real until it's in front of me. And I have no confidence that it will be. So we'll see. We'll see. Maybe we're all completely wrong about the potential of Avatar as a video game.
Here's my request to the gamer gods: put this game on Game Pass. I just want to see. I just want to see if it's bad. I just want to see. I'm not paying $70 to see. I just want to know.
I just want to pay my however many dollars a month. Just to, I'm just gonna download it. I'm going to find the first mount.
To ride a vehicle. To hold X and ride a vehicle is what Alex was going.
I can't
Stop
wait
him, stop
for the
him!
news that this game has been transformed and is no longer a first-person single-player adventure. It is now a 5v5 multiplayer human versus Navi.
Oh my god!
Every other
Actually
multiplayer game that
driving, wow.
exists.
Or some sort of like looter shooter, like shared space with like a fucking a.
If this turns out to be
Destiny
Anthem,
Towers.
I will be done. Done with video games. Because I think there's a legitimate chance this turns out to be Anthem. I don't know how.
Oh man!
I don't know what
Oh,
that would look
man.
like in first person, but I
You
feel
know,
like there's a
because-
legitimate
you know-
chance that that's what happens.
Because it's Ubisoft, I wouldn't put it past them. I really wouldn't. If you remember,
Okay,
they took that Ghost Recon Wildlands and turned it into essentially like a Destiny looter shooter thing.
We
I
need
wouldn't
to
put it
find
past
out.
them.
We need to ask anyone who's played Anthem to see if there is recycled landscape and architecture. From it.
I know not one but two friends that both play Anthem and enjoy it, and
I'm
still
sorry
play
for
it
their
from
loss.
time to time. So I want them to play it because I want their reaction if that's what it turns out to be. Oh man.
This has really just made me more excited to play Armored Core. I think that's really the
Yeah.
the takeaway here, because I was like,
Yeah.
oh, I would like to play the mechanical side of things. I'm like, oh, that's just Armored Core, so I'm going to play Armored Core instead. Speaking of Armored Core,
Armored Core
that's on our list.
Oh.
6.
Oh, my beloved. I don't know. There's so many directions they could go because interestingly enough, Miyazaki, Mr. FromSoft man, for at least like 50 to maybe even 60% of the original fan base of Armored Core was the guy who killed it. Because he directed 4 and 4 Answer, and all the Armored Core games before that are like purposefully clunky, but you can master them to go kind of fast. And then 4 and 4 Answer are like they're just almost flight simulators with how fast you can just zip around
They're
the
quick.
environment. Like,
Yep.
look at gameplay for them. It looks like seizure inducing. It looks insane. Like you can't even comprehend what's going on by watching them. I'm sure it feels amazing to play because a lot of games are like that just from like watching them. But the difference is crazy, and I don't have a PS3, which is the only thing that other than a 360, but they're not backwards compatible because Microsoft doesn't like me. I don't know. I don't know. It said in that one big interview that they did that they're going to be taking little bits and pieces of things that they've learned from doing their more recent titles, which makes sense. I mean, you've won like so much praise for almost every single title that you've released as a duo of dev teams, because there's an A team and a B team for at least like the action games that FromSoft does. It makes sense to take aspects from those and put them into what you do next. But at the same time, all the people on the internet right after it got announced at the Game Awards were like, I can't wait for the onslaught of YouTube videos asking whether it's going to be a Souls-like or not. When
My
it's literally not
God.
going to be. And then, like within 90 minutes of the Game Awards ending, it already came true. And there was
YouTubers
already,
being
like,
outraged about it. It's like, it's not a Souls-like.
or
Oh my
not even
God.
that. It's just like VaatiVidya even made a video that has like the thumbnail of Souls-like ? And it's like, literally no, impossible.
How many
It
minutes
cannot
does it
be
say
an
the
Armored
video
Core
is in the
game.
thumbnail?
It's
you
like a
can
20-minute video or something.
Oh,
I'm sure
that can be distilled into less than 5 seconds.
by looking at the thumbnail. But like, just the way the Armored Core works, it's not romp stomp big robot time around a whole continent or whatever, and you get to do whatever you want and kill a bunch of guys to fight for good. It's literally like there are 3-ish corporations most of the time. They're all full of horrible people, and they're so much more powerful than whatever government that there is, that they just send more mercenaries like you out to screw the other ones over with violence and blowing up their workers and their supply chains and stuff. And you're a mercenary, so you don't get to fight on the side for justice. You're just, oh well, this mission offers me more money than
Money.
the other one. But it makes me blow up a subway full of civilians. But I
The
gotta
more
buy that new laser blade.
the
So
the most morally dubious, but I need to improve the heat sink on my core.
yes. And you really can't do that without the like mission structure that Armored Core has had for like ever. Because even when the gameplay changed with the PS3 and 360 titles, it still had like individual missions. That you they would have a map, like a big UI map with very cool digital styling and stuff that you could pick regions on and pick missions from different corporations and stuff. But it wouldn't it would kind of ruin it to like have to walk around like a real place to be able to do all that sort of stuff, because like, to put it into perspective, it's not like you don't just reload and your ammo comes back in Armored Core. You get like 400 bullets for that gun for a mission, and every single bullet you fired costs money. And
Oh.
it only replenishes when the mission is over, and then all of that money that you spent shooting those bullets or those missiles or whatever, that comes out of your paycheck that you see as a deduction on the point
Oh
screen in the
God.
credits. And it just, I don't
Oh,
know how you would do that with
capitalism end state.
exactly. I don't know how you would do that with like seamless, like a menuless like world kind of thing. So I'm glad that it at least seems like they're sticking to what Armored Core is and not trying to
Yeah.
make it something that it literally can't be without being something different.
And
Um,
I think it's good too for a developer to go outside of what they're used to. You know,
and they've
not that they
definitely
aren't
become
not that they aren't used to making Armored Core games, or the one that started the series, right? But I mean, they've been making Souls like after Souls like for however long now.
exactly.
I there has to be at the very least a vocal like section of that studio that just wants to work on something else. You know,
Because
not that that's a bad thing. It's just that's what naturally happens when you make, games in a similar genre for so long.
no, yeah, and that's what Miyazaki has been vocal about for like a year. Like after Dark Souls 1, he was like, okay, that's that's Dark Souls. There's no number next to it. I'm going to go work on Bloodborne now, which is a pretty different game gameplay wise. But money says you got to make Dark Souls 2. You got to make Dark Souls 2. And he was literally like, okay, just let the B team make it. I don't really care. Put my name on the cover if you really have to. I really don't care.
Is that a
And that's
real
why
thing?
people
The B
yes,
team thing? I've heard so much debate over whether the B team thing is real or not.
it's sometimes they work together from what I understand, but also it's like there's very much like a developer and director split between Dark Souls 2 and Bloodborne, because pretty much like all the people that would become renowned and known for doing really good things in FromSoft worked on Bloodborne, and everyone else worked on Dark Souls 2. And like a bunch of people got like shelved and like booted off the project for like it not going anywhere and stuff. Which is the real reason why Dark Souls 2 is not as good as the other ones, is because it just had a really crummy
Weird
development
development.
period. But like given the opportunity, if you're bored of, if you don't want to make another Dark Souls game, why would you? You just
Yeah.
make whatever you want, and then you get the best of both worlds, and then other team gets to make their own game or whatever. But like Dark Souls 3, even like playing it, you can feel, if you played the first two, it's almost like the fan service is almost like begrudgingly like, okay, we gave you Anne Orlando again. We gave you this. Stop. We will make
Stop
you not
asking for
want it
more.
anymore. Exactly. We'll make you not want it anymore by giving you too much almost. And it worked, because now I feel like people get it. People don't want like People don't really want a Sekiro 2. People want a Bloodborne 2 because I think the real reason people want a Bloodborne 2 is so they could play it on something new and don't
So
have
they
to
can play it at above
frame rate
30
that isn't
frames.
25.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, and not have like 20-minute loading screens every single time you die.
And I feel
That
like
sort of thing.
I feel like more people are asking for Bloodborne on PC versus Bloodborne 2 more so
Yeah,
than
yeah.
anything else.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, I don't know. I am a lifelong fan of the big stompy robots, and I tried Armored Core forever ago on the PS2, and it controls like the worst thing ever, so I hated it. But then I tried it again recently with the mental stigma that I literally had to so that I could say that I liked the older ones, and now I do, and now I get it. There's literally no way that 6 is going to control anywhere near as poorly, I would hope to God, because even though I like that scheme now, there's no place for it, and if it releases with tank controls in 2023, I don't know if
More importantly,
FromSoft
tank
is
controls
gonna
that
be
don't
enough.
use the analog sticks as well. Like that's the
Yeah.
real kicker for the early
Yeah.
Armored Cores. All right. Well, there's our Armored Core discussion. I'm sure we're going to talk about it again.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Let's move on to what I think will probably be the last thing releasing next year that we're going to talk about. Largely because there's a lot of games that we're definitely interested in that we haven't talked about here, but most of them haven't had new information. We've had a few more trailers for Tears of the Kingdom since the last time we talked about
A few
it.
more?
We talked about it back when it was announced, and then we said, oh, there was a new trailer, and then we moved on. But now is the time, I think, to actually get Tears of the Kingdom, Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom is on the horizon for Switch. What's the feeling? What's the vibe?
I'm excited. I love Breath of the Wild. I think it's probably like if I had to of all the games I've ever played and I had to rank them, it would definitely be up there, maybe not top 5, but probably somewhere in the top 10 for me. I have so many like great moments from the original. I'm excited. I'm excited.
I think I'm with you on that. I'm really curious to see what this is going to actually play like. Because I think it's pretty clear they want to mix things up a little bit, but not too much. Because Breath of the Wild worked really well, and I think it'll work really well again.
Mhm.
So I'm interested to see what the line is between old and new for Tears of the Kingdom.
Is it going to be the exact same ground map with a few craters, but then
I mean, I'm okay with
aerial
that.
dungeons,
Reuse all the
or-
assets you need to reuse to get this game out.
My one question about this is that they very rarely do like direct follow-ups with Zelda, right? They have Majora's Mask, which was a follow-up to Ocarina of Time. Zelda 2, kind of a follow-up to the first one. Kind of. I think like Oracle of Ages and Oracle of Seasons somehow.
Spirit Tracks is a sequel to Hourglass.
Yeah, Spirit Tracks and Hourglass, but they don't really do direct follow-ups that much, right? They tend to like have a different Link, a different Zelda, a different Ganon. And so I wonder, this is like completely irrational, right? And I don't really know if any of this is actual truth or not. It's just something I've thought about. How much of, because it looks art style wise, at least from what we've seen, a lot of it looks the same with some mix-ups here and there, but they don't want to change too much. How much of that is that's the kind of game they want to make, and how much of that is holy crap, this was really, really well received, let's not deviate from the formula too much, even if we want to?
Well, God,
You know what I
imagine
mean?
if it was billed as a direct sequel to Breath of the Wild, and it brought back the Toon Link design.
Well, I mean,
What I
keeping
legitimately
the art style the
wonder-
same, I get that, but
What I wonder, Wyatt, is almost the opposite of how much of this might be a reaction to the, not necessarily vocal, but there was a group of players, and I don't know that they're a huge minority, but I know they're in the minority that were not super satisfied with Breath of the Wild as a Zelda game because it was missing a few Zelda mainstays. I wonder how much of that talk is what led to this, of them like, we have two groups of people one really likes it and one really wants to like it, but is just missing a few things to tie it together to what they really like about Zelda to keep playing the game and like to enjoy it to the degree that this other group is enjoying.
Yeah.
What if they can please both? Because they totally could. Like, you can get the cool physics
sure.
shenanigans of Breath of the Wild and combine it with the dungeon design of old Zelda games and end up with something really special, which is what I'm hoping happens here. What I would love to see here is that these islands are treated like mini dungeons almost, and like little mini puzzles for you to solve. Because I think they moved towards that in the DLC for Breath of the Wild. Because they had like the trial thing where you had these little rooms you did of like little trial encounters that you had to do to get like the powered up Master Sword, which was really cool. So I think they realized, hard, but I think
So
they realized
hard.
that there was a desire for that type of gameplay in Breath of the Wild.
Yeah.
And so I hope they kind of move towards that, and I hope they take some of the criticism of like, look, weapon durability, not necessarily a bad idea. Man, I would like to hit something for more than 10 seconds.
It was
something
way
shattering.
over. It was like way overtuned. For sure.
When I don't want to use any of the rewards because they're going to break in a minute. That doesn't feel great. So I hope they manage to strike the right balance with that.
The other thing too, and I always have this mindset with every like direct sequel, because oftentimes you find that sequels to games often have a lot of content that they wanted to have in that original, right? Like perfect example, Halo 2 was originally going to be Halo 2 and 3 in one video game. That's how nuts they wanted to get with Halo 2. But they had to cut that stuff, just gouge it out because
Thank God they did.
And thank God that they did. But I do wonder how many of the concepts we're going to see here were cut from the really strange and abnormally long development that Breath of the Wild had. Like, I wonder if these floating islands was here originally.
Because we know like there was a point where they wanted Link to have an alien motorcycle, which we eventually kind of got in that DLC. So I'm sure there's some wacky stuff that they have ready. I'm just really curious to see how far the sequel is going to take it in terms of new stuff to old stuff. Because Breath of the Wild, I don't think anybody would argue that Breath of the Wild is not a content-rich game.
Yes.
So I wonder if they're really going to aim for more, or if they're just going to aim to kind of pare down to what makes it best and then add on to that core. So I'm super curious about this game.
Yeah, I am excited because I love that first game so much. My only other reservation, so as much as I love Breath of the Wild, I've only played through it once, and to be fair to me, it was a very long playthrough. Like I beat Ganon a little ways into it, but there was so much more that I wanted to explore and do, and I eventually got like the DLC and all that stuff. But part of the reason I haven't gone back for a second full playthrough is because what excited me so much about that first playthrough is that no one really knew much about it, and there was so much discovery in terms of like what you could get away with the physics, with the sandbox and everything, and just exploring everything that the world had, because it was always throwing curveballs at you in terms of what's going to be in this area and how you can interact with it. But now that we kind of know like the deal, we kind of know what to expect. I don't know if this is going to be received as well, not just by me, but by others, but because we know more of what to expect this time. And I hope that they have a lot more surprises in there to really, mix things up. But I feel like for a lot of people, myself included, that first playthrough will never, ever be topped, just because that like sheer excitement of adventure and mystery isn't quite there now.
Yeah.
It's my only other reservation going into this, honestly.
My hope is that they can bring that mystery back. Like, I don't actually need to see the things that I was talking about of like a dungeon or something in this. I would love to have them, but they're not like must-haves for this to be a good game to me. What I really just want to see is for them to recapture that feeling of the original Zelda. And I think this is a weird parallel to draw, but I'd almost make this the line between Final Fantasy VII and Final Fantasy VII Remake. Of when you're remaking a game like that, what you want to actually remake is not the game as it was, but the game as people wanted it to be at the time, or imagined it in their heads to be 20 years later. So now you're looking at it 20 years later and you're like, how do we recapture the feelings that people felt when they played this original game and
Mhm.
deliver on that and add back onto it. And they made some choices to do that in 7 Remake that will land very differently for different people. So I'm wondering if that's kind of the path that's going to happen here, is to recapture that feeling of exploration. They're going to end up doing some weird things here that nobody expects. I'm very curious. I want to know what this is actually going to be like, because all the little bits of gameplay we've seen have looked very interesting. They've never been enough.
Yeah.
They've never left us long enough to actually figure out what is going on.
Which is good for a game like for this in particular. I want to know as little as humanly possible.
Yeah, I want them to tease me right up until it releases. That's what I'm hoping for. It's just random little things that make me go, huh? Until it comes out and I can go, ah.
Yeah. Having floating islands in Hyrule was just enough to be like, okay, that's what this is about. Cool. Don't show me anything else. Maybe a little bit.
One
here
more
and there.
trailer. One more trailer, and there's underground exploration.
Yeah, I think we have one more trailer coming for this game of like a significant gameplay thing to be revealed. That's what I would hope for, is one more hook trailer of like, what's the gameplay hook here? That is actually a thing that I do.
Because
Not
they
just the
didn't
environment.
show gameplay in the last trailer. They did show Link moving,
They
right?
showed,
Or falling.
yeah,
no,
they
they-
did. They showed
little
gameplay,
snippets.
but it's all little snippets, and there's no combat,
UI.
no anything like that, no UI. So I think we have one more reveal waiting. It's going to be like UI or something. There's going to be a thing in the UI that nobody knows what it is that's really mysterious, and that's going to be the hook.
Yeah.
There's just like a weird circle in the UI somewhere that has a half-filled bar, and you're going to be like, oh, what's that?
My only other ask in terms of improvements from the first game, and I know this is a weird thing with Zelda games because it's never been its focus, but man, I want a better story.
I just
I
want
want a better
people to
story
talk
so
to.
bad.
I want characters to speak to in the game, and this isn't a weird thing for Zelda. Like, don't go, doesn't exist in Zelda, because I played Twilight Princess, and Twilight Princess has that everywhere. So does Wind Waker. So does every other Zelda.
So does
That
Skyward
was a
Sword.
Breath of the Wild thing. I haven't played Skyward Sword yet. I do have it for my Switch, but I haven't played it yet.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think we have room here to be a little bit more overt with characters that you actually speak to that are impacting the story.
Well, you have more opportunity for the story too, because you've shown the little you explored the backstory bit.
The main events
in
of the
just Breath
story
of
are
the Wild.
not happening 100 years ago.
Yeah.
They're happening now.
Yeah,
Which is a
and
big
I want
difference.
more. I want Zelda to be more of a prominent character, because I think, at least compared to what I've seen in the few Zelda games that I have played that aren't Breath of the Wild, she's probably one of the more interesting iterations that we've had of her character. And I
She
want more of
builds
her.
up this build up to her being like an active player in the story, but she's not. Like, she doesn't show up in the game.
Yeah.
Bar memories and the ending.
Maybe that's another tease for Tears of the Kingdom. That we actually
who
get to play
knows?
as her in sections. Or
Okay, well
there's like a little...
that's a reach. I would love to see her more involved, I think, because there have been games where Zelda is a lot more involved in what is going on, and it's generally very well received, I think. So I want to give me the proper successor to Pirate Zelda from Wind Waker. And I'll be very happy.
Yes.
Have her do things. All right. Well, that's the things that we're looking forward to next year. The things that we're interested in, and some weird Skull and Bones. That's it. That's
Skull and Bones
just
was
Skull and
awesome.
Bones. Skull and Bones and Avatar just really being the wild cards for next year. So now I want to do shout-outs. But what we're going to do for shout-outs this time is we're going to do anti-shout-outs. And I want you to shout out one thing, one game from 2022 that you played that you just want to leave in the past, that you never want to interact with again. Something that you just didn't enjoy. It doesn't have to have released in 2022. Just something that you played in 2022 that you're just like, man, why? What was the point? I think there's some good ones that came out, some interesting games that were not super well received.
So
Does anyone have something that they really hated?
Looking at my document of all the things that I have played, I didn't play a lot of bad things in 2022.
That's
The thing
a
is,
good point. There wasn't a lot of bad games this year, but there were a few.
I have this written down as the dates is when I first played them. Because that's otherwise being more specific would just be horrible and would defeat the purpose of making a list at
Mhm.
all. Um, how do I put this? Because I know I'm going to end up playing it again because the alternatives are just not holding up. Um, I thought that the pale horse of Halo Infinite would be beaten to a sludge by this point. Um, but here I hear the news that they're making you can switch things between armor cores and they're giving you all the cores for free now. That is one of my biggest knocks against how the game was a year ago. All right, that is legitimately enough for me to give it a shot and play it again and see what's up. Cool. Forge is in the game. There's a custom browser. Awesome. So I sit and I wait for, however long it takes the not small game to download. And I start it up and I go to the customization menu. Yeah, you can put things between the armor cores, like the 10 basic Halo colors, and that's it. And yeah, they give you the armor cores for free, but none of the things to customize them with, and the only ways to get them are in the events that aren't happening anymore and are listed as unavailable from a previous event. The amount of times that message comes up scrolling through the single item tall scroll bar of a customization menu on one of the armored cores.
Oh no. No,
It's
don't
embarrassing.
associate that.
It's embarrassing. You cannot customize your character in this game. If you have not kept playing from the start, which why would you? For 90% of people, there's barely a reason to keep playing, even with the events. I see you looking at all your sleep paralysis demons in the room there, buddy. You're the only one who did. And I'm sitting here with the only things that I have to unlock are in the winter update and this whole other battle pass that I have to pay $20 to get any more customization in. What are they doing? This sucks. It's terrible. It's like I started the game and I was like I was excited and happy. I was just having a good day. And I saw this and I got actually mad. My day was ruined for the rest of that day because I was like, how could people be this stupid? How could a group of people come together and make decisions that have led to this? This is terrible. There's no good side of it other than that some of these things were free in the past. What happened to all that no FOMO stuff from before the game came out? 343 Industries,
FOMO is
Microsoft.
profitable.
The only thing that I disagree with you on here is that the price of the battle pass is $10 and not $20. Everything else I completely agree.
Okay. Okay.
Everything else I agree.
Well, what I learned, Halo Infinite taught me my limitation, which is XP boost being a reward of a battle pass.
Mhm.
That's my
Yeah,
limit.
that's
my thing. Consumable XP boosts and challenge skips being part of a battle pass. That was it for me. That's what completely removed me from the game. Of like, I am now the customization is no longer working as a carrot on a stick. It is now actively making me want to not engage with the game, which is nothing else has ever done that to me.
Yeah, genuinely. I have an
Black
addendum.
Desert.
Oh my god!
What?
I have an addendum because the other thing that made me even more upset, and do you think I'm gonna go to Halo Waypoint for Halo Infinite? You're insane if you think I'm gonna waste my time doing it. I'm not gonna waste my time looking things up for Halo Infinite. I'm gonna waste my time finding out that they're bad the hard way. So they have this the Christmas event. You can get a Santa hat, and you can get a little snowflake emblem or whatever.
This part.
What a wonderful thing to do for free that anyone can put a Santa hat on any of their helmets. And no, Just two. Just two helmets in the whole game on one armor core that I don't have anything else to use on because I only have first battle pass. Merry Christmas. You get your
Everything-
Santa hat that you can't use.
Everything this man said is completely true, and I completely agree with all of it. Now, what's my playtime on this again?
I just played more of it last night, Wyatt. I know.
I was gonna say I don't know Wyatt, but I know after this podcast it's gonna go up, and I don't know why.
Hold on. What am I at here? What am I at here? Oh,
It's
does
gonna
it
hurt
not?
to hear this number. It's gonna.
Does it not say anymore? Where
Too big.
You have to look at your achievements page.
my achievements page? God, they
it's in
just
a
changed
weird
some of their
spot.
UI recently, so it's kind of
So their UI is worse.
no for the
Yeah, for
Xbox
Game
app.
Pass.
They
Oh,
kind
okay.
of moved some things around, so now I'm confused as to where I'm supposed to go.
I hope you've just learned to regret everything about it. Or not.
I do have-
enjoy what you want to
well,
enjoy.
While Wyatt looks for this. Oh.
So I haven't found the hours yet because I'm stumbling over everything here, but I do still play it. It's still installed. I still boot it up. If I want the weekly ultimate, I'll put in more hours in a week than I normally do. Which, kind of goes back and forth depending on what the weekly ultimate unlock is, but I am still discovering new things that I can do in that sandbox and how just all the cool stuff you can do with it, and that's what's keeping me playing. And just how everything clicks together. Sometimes it can make some of the coolest moments that you can't make in other Halo games. And it's also the best feeling Halo game, in my opinion, just in terms of control. And that, for me, is enough right now. Also, I'm having matchmaking issues with MCC, so screw that. That's been really frustrating me for a while now. So even if I wanted to play other ones, even if I wanted to play older Halo games, I'm stuck. Which, I'm fine with, but is what it is. Anyway, let's not get stuck on this for too long. I'm sure we'll talk about this again at some point in the future.
Yep.
We will.
How many months have we done our Game Pass tradition for? Have we done it for over a year?
We've done that style of thing for a year, but they were inconsistent until we set a schedule last time. So it's been wacky.
Oh,
I think
found
we've
my
done
time
about
frame.
6 of them by now.
Okay, what I have mine. One game that I would love to be hit on the head and forget about. Not to have the ability to play it again for the first time, but to
Just to
hopefully
remove that
never.
experience from your life.
Yeah, non-guns.
Poor non-guns. We're beating up on non-guns so much.
It never ends. It doesn't
We're never
end.
gonna let it die.
It is the worst, least readable game I have ever tried to play.
Yeah, that's fair. That's
I mean,
fair.
that's a simple
And this
one.
isn't why this isn't a knock on you. You didn't know what you were
didn't
getting us
know.
into.
that's
I've
the point of the show.
absolutely, you've absolutely redeemed yourself. You've picked some banger games, and I'm sure that each
Finally.
one of us will, at one point in our Game Pass exploration, pick something that's that.
Non-guns.
Yeah.
Non-guns.
But if that didn't hurt, if you have to play a point and click adventure game with no words ever on the screen and vague low detail pixel icons to quit the game,
Well, Alt F4.
Mm-hmm.
That's what will happen.
Uninstall.
It's not a knock on
Forever.
trying new things. It just didn't work very well. And so that was the non-guns lesson. Maybe there's a big revelation at the end of non-guns that none of us ever got to. But
Well,
I think
if,
they could have pulled it off if there were more pixels to the images so that they were clearer. I think that it would have vastly improved it. Not enough to be memorable in a good sense, but enough to not be memorable in a bad way.
Well, bouncing off of other not great Game Pass Wyatt picks. Sometimes people make the argument that a game that elicits no reaction from you is sometimes worse than a game that elicits negative reaction from you, because at the very least it affected you in some way. Sometimes a game is so aggressively middle of the road 5 out of 10 that you wish it was points lower just so that you got something from it. This game that I'm talking about is, of course, Aliens Fireteam Elite. A game.
Oh yes.
Actually,
nothing-
forgot we played that.
Exactly my point. A game that adds nothing whatsoever to the genre that it's in or to video games in general, and that doesn't take away from it either. It just exists.
It takes up
It's there.
space, and that in itself is a crime.
And I think the only time that it elicited any kind of emotional response from me was the fact that I am a fan of both the license they're using and the genre of game that it's in. And they combined these two things in a way that was so just did not
The
work.
bare minimum.
The absolute bare minimum, and it's two things that were awkwardly just crushed together to make the most aggressively average experience you've ever seen in your entire life. It is the most game I think I have ever played in my entire life. So, yeah.
Man. All right, I gotta bring out the pocket pick I've been saving this whole time. I love a little studio called Platinum Games. I love everything that Platinum Games generally makes. Even the bad stuff I've usually had a good time with. Babylon's Fall. I did not buy Babylon's Fall. I played the free demo they put out and the free version that they had later to try and figure out what was the big deal here. And Babylon's Fall to me is one of the most sad things I've ever played. Because
no excuse.
There were a couple of ideas that I was like, this is pretty cool, but everything about them was executed so poorly and so badly and so horrifically put together in one of the worst looking painterly styled games that I've ever seen. Truly awful, where you realize that the painterly thing is just a filter. It's just a filter on the screen that stays in place when you move it over everything. It looks disgusting. It played, it played like a game. About all I can say about it. Babylon's Fall made me really sad. They even
had kind of a rough year, didn't they?
They did. And look,
bit.
I was okay with the idea of them using the Final Fantasy 14 outfits and whatnot as additional armor gear, so you have more cosmetic options. But you don't have more cosmetic options because you're gonna pay for them. Yeah, they made them pay in a full price game that had immediately a battle pass with nothing in it, as well as multiple paid expansions to get limited use outfits from other games, and just very bad story structure. Terrible hub world that felt straight out of Anthem. Truly, Anthem was the closest comparison I could come up to when trying to figure out how to navigate the hub world. That's the point where I quit the game, was trying to figure out the hub world in the second mission. I was like, I'm done with this. I can't continue to walk around this area because the visuals are giving me a headache. It was so unfortunate. Man, I hope Platinum Games' next thing is good.
I hope they're okay. Someone described Babylon's Fall to me. I think this was a YouTuber or something, and I can't remember who, as a skinwalker trying to be a video game. And it seems pretty applicable for every single thing I've seen about it.
It's really unfortunate. It is just, man, it's sad because so much effort clearly went into it that was all just badly spent. They didn't come up with a structure for a game. They came up with this weird free-to-play looking thing and just kind of slapped it together. And I just wish they had been working on any other game. Just put the talented people at Platinum Games to work on anything else, and it would have been fine. But no, they made Babylon's Fall. Man, that makes me sad. All right. That said, it is the end of the show. We've done our due diligence and shouted out the bad things from this year. Next week, we're going to talk about probably more things from this year, last year. We'll figure it out. We got a few topics to run through in January before we get to our award show, as well as our Game Pass Games Club for this month. So those are going to be coming up on the horizon. And we've also got Teach Wyatt how to actually use the Fantasy League. Because it's going to be really embarrassing this time. It's going to be
We're gonna be
this time.
we're
Because
gonna
there
have a
were
whole
reminders.
We're gonna have a televised lecture. We'll have open office hours at the end of the podcast in case anyone wants to come ask questions.
The really sad thing is that the only person that probably could have beat me if they'd picked other games was Wyatt, and he didn't.
Probably.
So
Yeah.
it was really a massacre this year in the worst fashion. So
I'm really looking forward
Do you
to
even want me
what
there?
the winner.
Do I even need to be there?
You have to
you
be
do.
there.
Yes,
you have to
You
answer
have
for what
to
you
be
did.
there.
Absolutely. I'm really looking forward to what our Ryan picks as our punishment because he wins.
Oh, that's right. I forgot there were stakes involved this year.
It was
There was
funny
stakes involved
last
year.
time.
You know,
Oh, that's right.
they're
Brett,
goofy
your
stakes,
voice
but
work
this time it's
for
gonna be
the last one
definitely-
was fantastic.
Sometimes you're the kind of person where you really need to look at your list of priorities, and sometimes some things just have to show up at the bottom of that list and never get touched. I'm not going to say whether this was one of those things, but I'm just saying something has to be down there.
Well, on that note, we'll see you next week. Tuesday mornings at 7 p.m. Eastern Time on the podcast called Your Choice, YouTube, and Twitch. That's it. That's the show.
Wow.
That was a show.
Little dance he's doing.
What a good way to end our winter break.